One of the former president's political foes while he was in office, Southern California Congressman Adam Schiff, the Democrat from Burbank, who is now running for the U.S. Senate to replace Senator Feinstein, served as an impeachment manager during Trump's first impeachment trial. Schiff also served on the January 6th committee investigating Trump's alleged role in trying to overturn the 2020 election. Congressman Adam Schiff joining us now on Fox 40. We appreciate you giving us some time this evening.
Great to be with you.
So I want to cover a lot in this conversation, but I just want to talk about what we outlined here in the lead up to you, this historic arraignment, this third indictment. A lot of the work and information that came out was done by the committee that you worked on, the January 6th committee. Your reaction to it?
Well, this is the most serious set of charges yet because they go really to the heart of our democracy. They concern a president's efforts to stop the peaceful transfer of power, the multiple conspiracies that he engaged in. It's going to be very important for this trial to go forward, for it to proceed in an orderly way. I think it's a trial that ought to be televised, and recently led a letter among my colleagues to urge the courts to televise the proceedings so that Americans can watch them and have confidence in the result, whatever that result may be. But I think for those of us who served on the January 6th committee and saw these witnesses and evidence, this is a logical step in accountability and justice.
And why do you feel like it's so important for those trials to be televised?
Well, the idea that we would try a former president and a candidate for president and the public wouldn't get to watch, and instead they would only learn about what's going on in the courtroom either through the lens of the former president speaking publicly when the prosecutors are not allowed to speak publicly, or reading it without being able to watch and evaluate the credibility of the witnesses. To me, that doesn't seem right. I think it would increase confidence in the process and the result if people could see it with their own eyes.
How confident do you think something like that will happen, that the judicial side will agree to something like that? Because typically we don't see court proceedings televised in federal court.
You're absolutely right. It's not the norm at all to televise proceedings, but this trial is not the norm. This is perhaps one of the most important trials in American history. It's a trial where the charges are central to the whole concept of democracy, that we have a peaceful transfer of power between presidencies and that the voters get to decide. So if there's ever a case for televised proceedings, I think this is it.
We all know the saying, perception is reality. If you believe what the former president is saying and what he is posting on Truth Social, he's loving this right now. He feels like the more indictments, as I believe he said, bring it on. The more indictments, the better. They make me stronger. He's out campaigning on it today, and his poll numbers continue to go up. How do you see that? What is your reaction to that? Do you think that just continues to solidify that he will be the Republican nominee?
I don't think indictments are ever a career-enhancing move, and I don't think they will be here either. He has a very loyal base, and it will stick with him through thick or thin. But I think there is still a very important middle, sensible middle, that doesn't want someone who may end up being a convicted felon in the Oval Office, but also believes in our democracy, is willing to be moved by facts. The remarkable thing about the witnesses we produced on the January 6th committee, and that will be produced during this trial, they're almost all Republicans, and they're almost all people Donald Trump appointed. And so these are not partisan Democrats. These are not never Trumpers. These are people who came to Washington with him. These are people who were state Republican legislative leaders. And
his vice president.
And the vice president, his own vice president. So it's important, I think, for the country to see that.
Okay, I want to pivot now and talk about your other job. Now, you're not only serving as a member of Congress and on these various committees, but you're running for a pretty big job here in the state of California. You're obviously here in Sacramento tonight for an event later this evening. We'll talk about that in a second. But you were in Fresno yesterday, Bakersfield the day before. For voters who are trying to learn more about the candidates in this race right now, why should they select you?
Because I have the best record of actually getting things done, of building mass transit, of building an early earthquake warning system, of getting legislation passed to bring up-to-date textbooks to schools, of bringing millions of dollars back to California to find shelter for the homeless. It's why so many of the California members of Congress have endorsed me, including Speaker Pelosi, Doris Matsui, Mike Thompson, and about 60% of the delegation. It's also why Mayor Darrell Steinberg is supporting me, because they're looking for someone who will get things done, who can bring down the cost of housing, who can bring down the cost of childcare and meet the everyday needs of Americans. That's what I have a track record of doing. Most people know me from my opposition to the former president, but the folks in the delegation know me from my work getting things done and delivering for Californians every day.
When you are traveling to these more rural areas that you've been in the past couple of days, what are people telling you when you're meeting with them?
Number one, they're thrilled that I'm there. They feel, particularly in the Central Valley, that that part of the state gets no attention. It doesn't get the resources it needs. There are acute challenges there. If the Central Valley was its own state of 6 million people, it would be the poorest state in the union. Rural health care is in collapse. Hospitals are shutting down. Broadband access is limited. Air quality is causing high rates of asthma. They need a champion in the Senate that's fighting to bring back resources, fighting to make sure that every part of the state is represented, and that's what I'm committed to doing.
I get your campaign emails. When it comes to fundraising, you're a rock star, as a lot of consultants will describe you. But it doesn't seem, I mean, I've seen clips of you down in Los Angeles picketing with the workers that are on strike, the writers and the actor strike. As you just mentioned, you're outlining your trips to the Central Valley. Even though we all know it costs a lot of money to run for office in the state of California, do you feel like that gives you an advantage over your two other opponents, or are you going to be, hitting the ground up until primary election day?
Oh, I'm going to be hitting the ground every day, every hour of the day, up until election time. I think the strength that I have in terms of fundraising is the fact that it comes from the grassroots, that it comes from tens, even hundreds of thousands of people in small amounts. The average contribution we get is about $34. So that shows, a personal commitment when people are willing to, send a small check. It really matters. But I really love the personal connection when I'm out on the campaign trail, talking to people about their families, about their lives, about their aspirations. And I have the same question for all of them, which is, what can I do to help?
All right, so this race, we're still really, really early. A lot of the polling shows that there is a big chunk that's undecided right now. And in our statewide Senate special that you were a part of, we talked to our friend Joe Garofoli from the San Francisco Chronicle, and he talked about where certain voters might be right now in terms of what they're looking for. Obviously, running against Katie Porter and Barbara Lee, the two other prominent Democrats in this race right now. And Joe Garofoli said, it's going to be interesting to see if Californians want, these are his words, wants to send two dudes from California to Washington. Obviously, there's Senator Alex Padilla. I know you're in Sacramento tonight and you're meeting with the women Democrats of Sacramento County. So what would you say to persuade some female voters that you understand their issues?
Well, I think I have a very, very strong record on issues of particular concern to women. I've been a vehement advocate for choice and against the Dobbs decision. In fact, I'm leading an effort, along with Hank Johnson, to expand the Supreme Court so we can restore rights to Americans, not take them away. But I would also look at the people who are supporting me, who know us the best and work with us. Nancy Pelosi endorsed me on day one of the campaign because she knows I'll be effective in the Senate. And I do think voters should consider gender, and I think voters should consider race as well. I think they'll also consider who's going to get something done to improve the state of California. And I think that's where my strength lies, and that's the case I'm making.
All right. We unfortunately are out of time. We know you have a busy evening ahead of you, so we will let you go. Congressman Adam Schiff, candidate for the U.S. Senate here in California. Appreciate you giving us a few minutes this evening.
Thank you.